Well, it finally happened. I got carpal tunnel. About a year ago, I started feeling tingling within my arms after waking up, and it only gets worse whenever I'm doing any strenuous activity. While playing PC games, my left hand starts cramping up after staying in the WASD position for 10 minutes, and even when using a controller, both my hands can start acting up. This became more apparent when Silksong came out, as when I was struggling to defeat a boss, my hands would start falling asleep, and it would cause me even more pain than from getting my ass kicked. However, the worst pain tends to happen whenever I play anything on a handheld. I have always been a massive handheld gamer, ever since I got my Game Boy Color as a kid. Even when I had access to the TV with a game console connected, I would always find myself playing on handhelds more often, and this trend continued up to now. It wasn't only because I enjoyed playing games on a handheld more, but I also enjoyed the games that were on handhelds more than I did the console games. Initially, handheld gaming existed more as a complementary platform alongside consoles. Although the Game Boy was trying to emulate the NES in a portable form factor, it had too many limitations that prevented people from enjoying it as one. Good luck trying to get some nightly game sessions in without a backlight. Fortunately, developers worked around these limitations to deliver great experiences ideal to play on the go. The screen may not be as big as your TV, but developers designed their games around it so they're still viewable from a distance. The games were also designed to be played in short bursts, so players can easily get back into their play sessions whenever they have the time. While console gaming continued to get bigger and more complex, handheld gaming remained simple and accessible, which helped it become the biggest platform around. But as technology improved, the gap between console and handheld gaming started to close. While it was impressive to see console quality games now being played portably, it also made its shortcomings more apparent. These newer handhelds were missing some inputs needed to play these games comfortably, and it made people question why they wanted to play these games on a handheld to begin with. Worse still, because these companies were focusing more on bringing console-like experiences on the go, the more casual games were pushed to the wayside, but they were finding better appreciation on the new smartphone platforms. Because of these limitations, and because these handhelds were starting to cost as much as a console, people decided they were better off sticking to console gaming and using smartphones for their casual fix. Ironically, Nintendo had the opposite problem. People were still buying their handhelds, even if it was less than before, but nobody was interested in their consoles anymore. To alleviate this, Nintendo decided to merge their console and handheld divisions together and focus on one platform that can deliver on both experiences: the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo likes to advertise this thing as a hybrid console, but in reality it's a tablet you can hook up to the TV. It may overclock the APU when you hook it up to the dock, but all the internals are within the tablet itself. Although it's great to see handheld gaming brought back from the dead with the Switch, it did lead to one major consequence. Handheld games are no more. All console and PC games are now handheld games and vice versa. What's the problem, you ask? It all comes down to how these games are made. Most developers, particularly AAA developers, design their games to be played on big screen TVs and monitors. Their games are filled with tons of details and small text, which can be difficult to see on smaller screens. To compensate, handheld manufacturers had to make their screens bigger. This was initially a problem with the original Switch. The tablet has a respectable 6.2-inch screen, but it still wasn't enough. Many games had text that was too small to see in the handheld, which became worse when most games ran out of lower than native resolution. Worse still, you had to deal with the Joy-Cons. The buttons are too small, the analog sticks have very little movement, and they also drift after a while, and they have no grip whatsoever, meaning my hands start to cramp up after about a half hour of play. Fortunately, there's a ton of Joy-Con replacements released to help alleviate this, with my personal favorite being the Nitro deck. Combined with the Switch OLED, it makes for a great handheld experience. With the Switch 2, although they made a few improvements, it honestly feels worse. Although the Joy-Cons are bigger with larger buttons and sticks, it still feels awkward to hold because there's still no grip. The larger screen makes it difficult to hold for people with smaller hands, and with the way your index fingers curve when using the triggers, you don't have a lot of support while holding it, meaning most of the pressure is digging into your palms. Unfortunately, I'll most likely be using the Switch 2 as a docked-only device, or at least until the Nitro Deck 2 comes out. It's not a complete loss. Thanks to the success of the Switch, there are many competitors out there. The last few years saw a ton of handheld PCs come out, with most of them having enough power to run even the most graphically intensive AAA games at a decent frame rate. They also come with large screens and a full-size controller layout, meaning you can finally play console games on the go with no compromises. For me, I've been very happy with the Steam Deck OLED. The OLED screen fixed many of the complaints I had with the original version, where the screen bleeding is gone and the touchscreen actually works most of the time. The control layout is perhaps the most comfortable I've ever used. The D-pad placement makes it perfect for 2D games, while keeping the analog sticks on the same axis so they're still comfortable to use. The touchpads are also a great plus, as they work very well for games that need precise camera controls. You bet I'll be buying the new Steam controller on day one. Even though the hardware has aged a bit and doesn't run modern games that well anymore, I've mainly used the Steam Deck for indie games, so it's still a great handheld in my eyes. There's just one problem. It's incredibly heavy! Out of all the handhelds I used, the Steam Deck causes my carpal tunnel to act up the most. Lifting the Steam Deck in front of my face puts a lot of pressure on my elbows, or my entire arm starts to fall asleep after a while. Yes, I know I could play with it on my lap, but even then, my hands start to hurt due to the sheer weight of it. Also, if you're playing AAA games on this thing, you'll be lucky to get up to 2 hours of gameplay on the battery. You can tinker around to get a lower power draw, but I don't want to bother with that when I'm on the go. Unfortunately, these are problems with all PC handhelds, with the more powerful ones being even heavier. That's a consequence of sticking with x86 architecture, I guess. So it looks like these modern handhelds aren't fit for me. What if we go for something more traditional? Over the last few years, there have been many companies releasing their own handheld systems with similar designs to the handhelds of yesteryear. They come in various form factors and they're available at any budget, depending on what type of games you want to play. For me, I would like a handheld that's powerful enough to run PS2 and GameCube games. For a while, these handhelds struggled with these games until fairly recently, and the one handheld that I heard that was the best for this was the Retroid Pocket 5. It has a 5.5-inch OLED screen, a Snapdragon chipset, and a full controller layout so you can play anything you want on it. Reviewers at the time were raving about it, stating it was the best handheld to get. I ordered it, waited for it to ship from China, set everything up, and then ended up hating it. There's nothing wrong with the hardware itself, I just find it uncomfortable. It's supposed to be similar to the PlayStation Vita in terms of ergonomics, but everything's too cramped. The Vita has these rounded edges where your index fingers wrap around it. These leave your thumbs free to move around the console without putting too much pressure on your hands. With the Retroid Pocket 5, it feels like you're clenching a fist as your thumbs are too close to your index fingers. Your thumbs hover over the analog sticks when playing 2D games, and you'll get arthritis if you try to play 3D games like this. Although grip attachment does alleviate this issue a bit, the buttons and analog sticks are still too small for me to enjoy using it very often, so I had to go with something else. After doing some more research and soaring through the thousands of videos talking about each handheld, I decided to next try out the Anbernic RG406H. Sure, I'll be missing the OLED screen and the hardware isn't as powerful, but it makes up for it by being significantly more comfortable. It has grips on each side that makes it comfortable to hold for long play sessions, similar to the Steam Deck. In fact, with this black color, the handheld even looks like a miniature Steam Deck. The buttons are big enough for me to use without covering them all at once, and the analog sticks are tall and have a great range to them. The D-pad may be a bit spongy for my liking, but overall it has a great layout. As for the performance, although it has trouble running a few GameCube and PS2 games I tried, most games work with at least native resolution. So there you go. The Anbernic RG406H is the perfect handheld for me, right? Well, not exactly. Although I'm very happy with the system, there are still some limitations I have to deal with, particularly with the screen. It might be because I'm old, but I have a hard time seeing what's happening in certain games with the 4-inch 4x3 screen. And that's considered large by these handheld standards. It still plays fine with handheld games, as those games were designed to be played on smaller screens, but for console games, I have a hard time seeing what's going on most of the time. These games were designed to be viewed on a big CRT, and if you didn't have a big CRT, you fried your eyes by sitting close to it in the middle of the night. On a 4-inch screen, it can be difficult to see objects that are far away in 3D games. Even in 2D games, text and sprites can appear tiny. That's why most handheld ports back then zoomed in the image, and not just because they're working with a smaller resolution. If I wanted to make the most of this handheld, I would have to play it with the screen close to my face, which causes my elbows to cramp up and then my hands start to fall asleep. Unfortunately, the Anbernic RG406H isn't going to work for me. I could try to find another handheld that might work better, but it's too much of a hassle to deal with. I can watch tons of videos discussing every different handheld and try to guess how comfortable they'd be in my hands, but you won't know unless you actually try it out yourself. You need to order them directly from the manufacturer, wait for them to ship from China, get screwed over by your own government in tariffs, and then set everything up just to be disappointed that it's still not as comfortable as you'd like. It's too costly and time consuming for me to put up with, but I'm guessing that's why enthusiasts have about 20 of these things by this point. It doesn't look like there's any device out there that's comfortable enough for me. Fortunately, there's still one other option. Make your own handheld. Now, I'm not talking about building the hardware and casing yourself, though if you're a manufacturer who wants to partner up, feel free to hit me up. It's actually much simpler than that. Do you have an old phone or tablet laying around not being used? Why not prevent it from getting spicy and use it as a handheld? Take your device, get yourself a controller, and you have yourself the perfect handheld. Any mid-range device released within the last 5 years should be powerful enough to emulate up to the 6th gen consoles, and if all you care about is playing 2D games, then any device should be good enough for that. There are a variety of phone controllers available at various price ranges, or you can simply use your favorite console controller and get yourself a clamp. I had this Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus that's been sitting around and decided to convert it into a new handheld. As for my controller, I went with the Razer Kishi V3, as it has the same layout as your typical controller and it fits perfectly in my hands, though it does come at a hefty price. With Android, you can install any front end you want to make your device more controller friendly. I go with Daigisho personally, as you can organize your ROMs by console with the box art appearing for each game. Essentially, I created a new Retroid Pocket 5 with a better control scheme that doesn't hurt my hands. Unfortunately, while the screen is the same size as the Retroid Pocket 5 when you take the 16:9 ratio into consideration, it's still a little too small for me. I decided to go with another device for my handheld, but before I discuss my final results, I just want to say that yes, I know these different handhelds won't solve my problem completely. Although I did alleviate some of my symptoms, they can still appear after prolonged use or if I'm playing anything stressful. The best way to deal with carpal tunnel is to prevent it from ever happening, so please take care of yourself. Make sure you take regular breaks when using any electronic device for long periods of time. Make sure you exercise your hands by stretching them out. Please take care of your own health by exercising and eating a well-rounded diet. And if possible, go to your local wizard so you can get a potion to stop aging because my god, getting old sucks! With that out of the way, let's show my final results. With RAM prices as crazy as they are and with no sign of it ending anytime soon, I thought it was time to upgrade my phone before prices went through the roof. At this point, every phone feels exactly the same, and I'm not a photographer or mobile gamer, so I didn't really see a need to upgrade. However, what if there was something that was different? And what if that thing is also something that is needed for my handheld? I think you know where I'm going with this, but the phone I chose was the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. I didn't think I'd be this obsessed over the folding screen. You're carrying around an 8-inch tablet in your pocket. It's nice to be able to watch YouTube videos while browsing the web or going on Discord, or use it to cheat in Duolingo. The best part is the large screen is perfect for 4x3 content. Playing retro games on this thing is an absolute joy. Everything appears crystal clear, even from a distance, and with the Snapdragon Elite chipset, you can run GameCube and PS2 games at 3 times resolution perfectly. You can even play DS and 3DS games comfortably, where the screen's big enough to show both screens at their intended sizes. It's just a shame they dropped S Pen support for this thing, smaznug! Best of all, this phone is incredibly light, weighing about the same as any other smartphone, so long play sessions are indeed possible with this. The only problem is with the placement of the USB-C port. Most phone controllers have the USB dongle on the right side, but using those in this phone means the controller is hanging on top of the screen, which can make it awkward to hold. I recommend either finding a controller with the dongle on the left side, or sticking with a Bluetooth controller like the GameSir G8+. With this setup, I can play whatever I want with this and do so in comfort. Am I telling people to spend $2,000 on a phone to get the perfect handheld? Oh god no! But it does show how handhelds can improve in the future. With ARM processors constantly improving, we're starting to see smaller devices that are powerful enough to play most games. Hell, we're already seeing this with GameHub and Game Native, where you can run PC games on Android. We're already seeing Windows laptops running with ARM chips, and Valve is experimenting with putting SteamOS on ARM chips with the Steam frame. Although there may be some compatibility issues for review games, switching to ARM may be the most beneficial for handheld gaming in the future. We can have large screen handhelds with a decent battery life and not have your hands crushed in the process. Will I stick with playing games on my Fold 7 after this video? Will the camera annoy me so much that I end up buying a new handheld soon? Maybe. But hey, I still use my Steam machine!